Have you ever wondered how a simple dinner can change an entire life? This is the story of a question so innocent that it ended up touching the hearts of millions of people around the world. To understand how we arrived at the moment that destroyed everyone, we need to go back to an apparently ordinary night in Oakland, California. It was Tuesday, and the aroma of hamburgers and French fries hung in the air at Danny's Diner, one of those family restaurants where each table tells a different story. The sound of silverware touching plates, mixed with low conversations and the occasional laughter of a child. At that moment, no one could imagine that this night would become one of the most special in basketball history. Sarah Mitchell nervously adjusted her purse strap while watching her daughter Emma, 8 years old, enthusiastically flip through the menu for the third time. It was possible to perceive that this outing represented much more than just a family dinner. After 3 months of tight finances and home-cooked dinners with little beyond the essentials, they had finally managed to save enough money for this small luxury. "Mommy, can I order the chocolate milkshake?" asked Emma, her eyes shining with that unique energy that only children can have when faced with something simple. Michael Thompson, her father, smiled while mentally calculating whether the budget would allow it. Work at the mechanic shop had been irregular in recent months, but seeing his daughter's happiness in those moments, some things are priceless. "Of course, Princess. Today is a day to celebrate." And celebrate what, exactly? Sometimes life teaches us that we don't need great reasons to find joy in small things. For the Thompson family, being there together, after so much time, was already celebration enough. Time seemed to flow differently that night. Emma was enthusiastically telling about her presentation at school, gesturing theatrically as only an 8-year-old child can do. Sarah and Michael exchanged knowing glances, those that only parents can understand, a mixture of gratitude, love, and the silent hope that better days were coming. It was then that something changed in the restaurant's energy. Jennifer Walsh, the waitress who knew practically all the regular customers, approached the table with a different expression on her face. There was something in the air, an expectation, as if the restaurant itself was holding its breath. "Sorry to interrupt," said Jennifer, her voice carrying contained emotion. "But have you noticed who just walked in?" What no one expected was that at that moment, when Sarah slightly turned her head, she would see a figure that would transform that ordinary night into something extraordinary. Tall, with a discreet smile, and a presence that, even trying to go unnoticed, naturally attracted respectful glances. Steph Curry had just entered Danny's Diner. How is it possible that destiny works in such mysterious ways? There he was, the player that Emma religiously watched on television, the man whose three-point shots made the little girl jump on the living room couch, now just a few meters away. Emma hadn't noticed yet. She continued stirring her milkshake, telling her parents about how she had helped the teacher with the blackboard that day. But something was about to happen. Something that would begin with a child's innocence and end up touching hearts around the entire world. "Great. Things happen when no one is paying attention," Sarah whispered to Michael, not knowing how prophetic that phrase would become. Steph requested a table in the corner, clearly hoping for a quiet meal after an intense game against the Lakers. He wore a simple hoodie and a cap that tried to disguise his identity, but for any basketball fan, that silhouette was unmistakable. It was at this exact moment that Emma turned her head. Her eyes widened. The milkshake almost slipped from her small hands. For a second that seemed like an eternity, she simply stared, as if she needed to confirm she wasn't dreaming. "Mommy?" she whispered, pulling the sleeve of Sarah's blouse with an urgency that only children can have. "Mommy, is that Is that Steph Curry? Sarah's heart raced. It wasn't possible. Not there. Not that night. Not when they were just trying to have a special family moment. But when she looked again, there was no doubt. Emma began to get up from her chair. Emma, no. Michael whispered quickly, "Let the man eat in peace." But something any father knows is a child's determination when she has a mission. And Emma, at that moment, had the most important mission of her small life, to meet her hero. "I just want to say hi," she said, with that irrefutable logic of children. What happened in the next few seconds would change everything. Emma walked with the confidence of someone who believes the world is a place where dreams can come true. Her little steps echoed on the restaurant floor, like the beats of an anxious heart. Steph was looking at the menu when he noticed a small presence beside his table. When he raised his eyes and saw those bright eyes full of admiration, his face lit up with a genuine smile. "Hi," said Emma, with the simplicity that only a child's purity can carry. "Hi, Princess," Steph responded, lowering the menu completely. "What's your name?" "Emma. I watch you on television all the time. You're incredible." And it was at this moment that Emma asked the question that would change everything. The question that would become viral. The question that would touch hearts and remind the entire world about the magic of human innocence. A question so simple, so pure, so unexpected that Steph Curry, the man who had faced the greatest pressures of world basketball, was completely speechless. "Want to have dinner with us?" There is a moment in life when time simply stops. A second that extends like an eternity, where each heartbeat echoes, like silent thunder. That was exactly what happened when those 5 simple words came from Emma's lips. "Want to have dinner with us?" The entire restaurant seemed to have held its breath. Jennifer Walsh, who was carrying a tray with hot plates, became motionless like a statue. The couple at the next table stopped their conversation in the middle of a sentence. Even the sound from the kitchen seemed to diminish, as if the universe itself wanted to hear the answer to that question. Steph Curry looked into those bright and innocent eyes, and something happened inside him that he rarely experienced even in the most intense moments on the court. It was possible to perceive that this wasn't just a casual question from a child. It was an invitation loaded with purity, hope, and the absolute faith that the world is a place where heroes can sit at the table with ordinary people. From the other side of the restaurant, Sarah felt her face heat up as if someone had increased the room temperature by 10 degrees. Michael got up from his chair with the speed of someone who had just seen his daughter do something that could change their lives forever, and not necessarily in a positive way. "Emma," Michael whispered, walking quickly toward his daughter. "Come back here now." But something extraordinary was happening. Steph gently raised his hand, a universal gesture that said, "It's okay," and smiled in a way that would melt the coldest heart. "You know what, Emma?" said Steph, his voice carrying a tenderness that contrasted with his image as a fierce competitor on the courts. "It's been a long time since someone made me such a special invitation like this. How many times in life do we receive an invitation that touches our soul so deeply?" For Steph, accustomed to gala dinners, corporate events, and 5-star restaurants, that question represented something money can't buy: absolute authenticity. "Does that mean you'll come?" Emma asked, her eyes shining with hope that could illuminate the entire city. Michael reached them, his face red with embarrassment. "Mr. Curry, please, excuse me." She shouldn't have bothered. "Bothered?" Steph interrupted, and for the first time that night, his voice carried the same intensity he used when commanding his team. This is the most beautiful thing that's happened to me in weeks. What no one knew was that Steph had left that game against the Lakers carrying the weight of a painful defeat. A night where nothing had worked, where each shot seemed to conspire against him, where media pressure and the expectations of millions of fans weighed on his shoulders like a mountain. Great things happen when no one is paying attention, and at that moment, something was transforming in the heart of one of the world's greatest athletes. "Emma," said Steph, crouching down to her height, "tell me something. Where do you live? Is it far from here?" Sarah approached, still trying to process that this conversation was really happening. "Mr. Curry, we live only 15 minutes from here. But please, don't feel obligated." "Obligated?" Steph laughed, and it was a genuine laugh, liberated, as if something heavy had left his chest. "Do you have any idea how long it's been since I received a dinner invitation, without ulterior motives, without agendas, without anyone wanting anything other than company?" Jennifer Walsh approached discreetly, still holding the tray, but now with teary eyes. 23 years serving tables in that restaurant, and she had never witnessed anything like this. "Can I ask a question?" Steph said, looking at Michael and Sarah. "Would you really receive me in your home? A family that barely knows me?" Michael felt something stir inside his chest. There was something in that man's voice, a vulnerability that contrasted completely with the image of the confident superathlete everyone knew. It's impossible not to feel that some people are special from the first moment you meet them, said Sarah, the words coming from her heart before her mind could filter them. Emma pulled Steph's hand with the confidence of someone who never doubted that heroes are real people. "My mom makes the best macaroni and cheese in the whole world, and we have ice cream for dessert. How is it possible that such a simple offer can touch someone so deeply?" Steph looked around the restaurant, people trying to disguise that they were watching, some already with cell phones in their hands, others simply absorbing the magic of that moment. "You know what impresses me most about this situation?" Steph said, his voice now loaded with an emotion he rarely showed publicly. "On a night when I felt lost, an 8-year-old girl offers me exactly what I needed most: a home." The silence that followed wasn't embarrassing. It was the kind of silence that embraces, that welcomes, that allows special moments to establish themselves in memory forever. "I accept," said Steph, and the words echoed through the restaurant like a declaration that would change everything. But with one condition. Emma tilted her head, curious. "You need to teach me how to make the best macaroni and cheese in the world." The smile that spread across Emma's face at that moment was photographed by at least 3 people in the restaurant. But no camera could capture what really happened. The exact moment when an innocent question built a bridge between 2 completely different worlds. Great things happen when no one is paying attention. And at that simple dinner that was about to happen, something much bigger was being prepared. Something that would touch millions of hearts and remind the entire world about the transformative power of human kindness. What no one could imagine was that this night was just beginning. Have you ever experienced that feeling that you're living a dream, but at the same time, you're absolutely certain it's real? That was exactly what Sarah felt when she opened her front door and saw Steph Curry crossing the threshold of her modest residence. The Thompson house was the perfect reflection of a working family. Small, but impeccably clean, with each object in its place. The aroma of vanilla candle mixed with the comforting smell of home, creating an atmosphere that no 5-star restaurant could replicate. "Our house is simple," said Michael, with that mixture of pride and insecurity that only working parents know. But it's ours. Steph stopped in the middle of the living room and looked around with an expression that surprised the entire family. It wasn't pity. It wasn't discomfort. It was genuine admiration. "Do you have any idea how long it's been since I entered a house that really feels like a home?" said Steph, his voice carrying an emotion he rarely allowed others to see. Emma ran to her room and returned with something that made Steph's heart almost stop. It was a Golden State Warriors jersey, clearly used, faded by time and washing, but carefully kept, like a treasure. "This is my lucky shirt," said Emma, extending it to Steph with the reverence of someone offering something sacred. "I wear it every time you play on television." But it was at this moment that something happened that would change everything forever. Steph held the jersey and noticed something that made his world stop. On the internal label, written with permanent pen in careful handwriting, was the name David Thompson, 2019. "Emma," Steph said, his voice suddenly lower. "Whose jersey was this?" The silence that followed carried the weight of a pain that some families know very well. Sarah and Michael exchanged a look that communicated years of loss and overcoming. "It was my older brother's," Emma responded, with the simplicity of a child who learned to talk about loss without losing hope. "He was your biggest fan. When he went to heaven, Mommy said I could keep his jersey." How is it possible that some stories have the power to completely transform our perspective on life? Steph felt something break and rebuild inside his chest at the same time. "David was," Michael began, his voice choked. "David was everything to this family. Leukemia. He fought for 2 years. He watched all your games in the hospital. Great things happen when no one is paying attention, and at that moment, Steph understood he wasn't there by chance. He was there because some connections transcend basketball, transcend fame, transcend any logical explanation." "He always said," Sarah continued, tears beginning to form in her eyes, "that one day he was going to meet you. That one day he was going to thank you for giving him hope during treatment." What happened in the next few seconds was the moment that destroyed everyone. And it wasn't what anyone expected. Steph knelt on the living room floor, held Emma's hands, and said something that would be recorded forever in that family's memory. "Emma, I need to tell you something very important. I met your brother." The world stopped. "What?" Sarah whispered, as if the words had come from another universe. 3 years ago, I visited the Children's Hospital in Oakland. One of the boys I met, brown hair, smile that lit up the entire room, told me he had a little sister who was going to be the biggest basketball fan in the world. His name was David." Emma began to tremble. Sarah brought her hand to her mouth. Michael sat heavily on the couch, as if his legs had lost all strength. "He made me promise," Steph continued, his own voice breaking, "that if I ever met a little girl named Emma Thompson, I would have to give an extra tight hug for him." What followed was one of the purest moments in human history. Emma threw herself into Steph's arms with a force that seemed to carry all the love she felt for the brother she would never see again. Steph held her as if he were embracing not just a child, but a promise he had carried in his heart for 3 years without knowing. "He said you were going to be special," Steph whispered in Emma's ear. "He said you were going to change the world with your kindness." Sarah and Michael hugged each other, crying tears that cleaned years of stored pain. It was impossible not to feel that David was there, somehow, uniting those people through a love that not even death could erase. "But wait," said Steph, pulling away slightly from Emma. "Our night isn't over yet. I have a surprise for you." Steph took his phone and made a call that would change that family's life forever. When he finished, he looked at the three of them with a smile that carried all the magic of that impossible moment. "I just spoke with my foundation. Starting tomorrow, Emma, you're going to have a complete scholarship to the best private school in Oakland. And you," he looked at Sarah and Michael, "will never again worry about medical bills or financial difficulties." But it hadn't ended. "And one last thing," Steph said, taking something from his pocket. It was a ring. One of the NBA championship rings. "David asked me to give this to your family when I found them. He said that one day you would need something to remember that miracles exist." At that moment, when Emma held that ring with her little hands trembling with emotion, when Sarah and Michael realized their lives had changed forever, when everyone understood they were experiencing something bigger than themselves, the entire universe seemed to be smiling. Great things happen when no one is paying attention, and that night had proven that some stories are written long before they happen, connecting hearts through time and space in ways our minds will never be able to explain. What none of them knew yet was that this story was about to touch millions of hearts around the entire world. Have you ever wondered how a story can travel faster than light? How a moment of pure kindness can cross oceans, cross continents, and touch hearts in different languages? This is the magic of stories born from true love. It all started with Jennifer Walsh, the waitress from Danny's Diner who had witnessed that impossible encounter. The next morning, she couldn't resist and posted on her social networks a simple account, but loaded with emotion. "Yesterday, I witnessed the most beautiful thing of my life. A little girl invited Steph Curry to have dinner at home, and what happened next made me cry with joy." What no one expected was the speed with which that post began to spread. In 2 hours, 1,000 shares. In 6 hours, 50,000. In 24 hours, the story had crossed borders and was being translated into dozens of languages. But the real explosion happened when Steph Curry himself decided to share his version of the facts. He posted a simple photo, his hands holding David's faded jersey, with a caption that destroyed hearts around the world. Sometimes, God uses an 8-year-old child to remind us why we really play this game. "Emma, thank you for teaching me that true heroes are those who open their homes and their hearts." David, promise fulfilled. It was impossible not to feel that this story represented something much bigger than a casual encounter. In an increasingly divided world where people isolate themselves behind screens and walls, the purity of that invitation, "Want to have dinner with us?" echoed like a cry of hope. Messages began arriving from all corners of the planet. A mother from Japan wrote, "My daughter watched the video and asked if we can invite our neighbors for dinner. You reminded me that kindness costs nothing." A father from Germany shared, "I lost my son 2 years ago. This story gave me hope that love never dies. It just changes form." Great things happen when no one is paying attention. And that story was proving that human kindness is still the most powerful force in the universe. 3 weeks later, something extraordinary happened. Inspired by Emma's story, children around the world began creating the Dinner with Heroes movement. Not famous heroes, local heroes. Teachers, firefighters, nurses, people who made a difference in their communities were being invited to family dinners by children who learned from Emma that generosity begins at home. Sarah Mitchell, who previously worried about whether she could pay the month's bills, now coordinated a foundation that had received donations from more than 40 countries. The David and Emma Foundation was dedicated to providing special moments for families going through difficulties, proving that some heroes are born from pain itself, transformed into love. Michael Thompson, the mechanic who calculated every penny before allowing a milkshake for his daughter, now managed a program that connected professional athletes with children in hospitals. "My son David always said that sports are about hope," he explained in interviews. "Now we can bring that hope to those who need it most." But who really transformed was Emma. The 8-year-old girl who once asked an innocent question became a small ambassador of kindness. In schools, charity events, television programs, she always carried the same simple message. Heroes are normal people who do extraordinary things. And all of us can be heroes. Steph Curry, in turn, created the tradition of having monthly dinners with a different family, chosen through letters sent by children. "Emma taught me that true victory doesn't happen on the court," he said in a moving interview. "It happens when we can touch a life in a positive way." How many times in life do we witness the birth of something that will change the world forever? That simple question, "Want to have dinner with us?" had become a global symbol of hospitality, kindness, and human connection. 1 year later, on the anniversary of that magical encounter, something surprising happened. Danny's Diner became a pilgrimage point for people from around the world. Not to take photos or buy souvenirs, but to live the experience of sitting at the same table where an innocent question changed the world. Jennifer Walsh, now the restaurant manager, always ended the tours with the same reflection. "You can sit at the table where it all happened, but remember, the magic wasn't in the table. The magic was in a child's courage to ask a simple question and a famous man's humility to say yes." And so, a night that began with a family trying to find joy in a difficult moment transformed into a global movement that proved a universal truth. Great things happen when no one is paying attention. But when we pay attention to what really matters, love, family, kindness, we discover that all of us have the power to change the world. One question at a time. Emma and Steph's story teaches us that heroes aren't perfect people who do impossible things. Heroes are normal people who choose to do the right thing at the right moment, who open their hearts when the world seems closed, who believe that a simple yes can transform not just one night, but an entire life. And in the end, isn't that what we're all looking for? Someone who says yes when we ask, with all our vulnerability and hope. "Want to have dinner with us?"